VIKTYRIA, you are currently sitting in your room at the oratory. Just 3 days prior, you learned that your house, Rivkan, and its keep on Lake Glamorn was assaulted and razed. That very few people, if any, have survived that attack, and if they are, they're scattered to who knows where, and to what strange corners of the kingdom that they might have been sent away to by the enemies who have slaughtered them. On one side of the room, there's your desk where all your manuscripts and books that you've been studying to take your vows still sit, now unused for the past few days as you try to come to terms with what's happened. In the other corner is still in its scabbard the Glamorn blade that belonged to your father, and then very, very briefly to your sister, and now rests in your room. You've yet to take it out. It's difficult to, I'd imagine, at this stage, to face it and the responsibility and symbol that it is. The oratory has delayed your vow ceremony that was meant to be today until the end of this week, allowing you some time to change your mind given this in the radical circumstances that have come over you and your house in the past days. But they'll require you to make a choice if you will still take them within the next day or two. As you're sitting here, what are you doing at this exact moment? What's kind of your mental state as you're in this room alone for the moment?
The floor of her world has just fallen out beneath her. She'd thought that was the case 3 days ago before she knew any of this. So I think it would be a swirling mist of like disbelief, denial, rage, then interpierced with despair. She stopped itching. She stopped scratching at the itches from the rough spun and like cloak over her. And these physical irritabilities, which were just deafening to her previously, now are drowned out by the gravity of her lineage and world that sword represents. And she's conflicted above all as she considers the choice before her. Conflicted that to take up the sword, so to speak, would be admittance of what she'd prayed for, liberation from this, despite warnings of such. Now that that's come to pass, it feels bitter. The symbolic admittance that taking the blade would bring, and then to take the path of faith would be to spurn what's become of what she'd wished foolishly. Still to do
There's
foolish things, no doubt. But she takes off her cloak, the one like etched with symbolry of the dames, one of like the many sects or orders here at the oratory. She turns it inside out, which some of the older, more fervent of the ladies would deem irreligious or worse, profane. She does it and throws it over the blade, hiding it, though it doesn't seem to drown out the voice that calls out in her mind for a moment as she does. And she'll move to like take the thing up as if hiding it, not sporting it.
there's a knock on the door, a very light knock, and then after a short moment, Lady VIKTYRIA, you'll hear a timid voice call out. You know that this is Maria. She's been your handmaiden for about 5 or 6 years now. She's a couple years younger than her, and she's helped tend to your things until your vow ceremony is complete, whereby she will be released from your service, or at least that was the plan for a while. May I come in?
Of course. And in that moment, it takes the girl to come in. She'll try and move to have her like self-obscuring the cloaked blade.
The door will creak open slowly as she'll enter. You can hear in the brief moments that the door is open, Sir Walter, your bodyguard, and the knight loyal to you in your house, speaking with a couple of the other people outside, though you cannot hear the specifics of their conversation in the brief moments of the door's opening, and it'll close gently again behind her as she enters. Her eyes will come down to the where you stand behind the covered blade. Though she makes no comment, you're not sure if she hasn't seen it or if she's choosing not to acknowledge it. And she'll sit on the ground next to you. Are you? How are you doing?
Oh, fine. I'm well enough. They've given me food and drink, she says, with just a last hit of bitterness that escapes with the words.
This is a difficult time. I know. I'm sorry if it is out of place for me to even bring it up. The oratory will be waiting soon, they said, for your decision. They want to know by tomorrow if you will be staying or not. You know what you will do?
She nods slowly, which the older woman, who I imagine knows her quite well, would be a look of certain of her course of action, but uncertain of what it will bring. Certain in her resolve of what she will do, uh, but maybe fearing it. And it's obvious to the older woman she's trying to hide that.
You know, for a while, I was worried that once you took your vows and that you left, be part of this place forever, and that I would be gone, that might be the worst thing that I had to look forward to. Sadly, it seems that was a mistake. And she'll kind of like look hesitantly, not knowing if that was wise for her to say or not. And she'll go about tending to some of your things, folding your clothes, and touching at the books on your desk as if to organize them, though the movements barely actually make a change. The others
Victoria,
outside will be. Sorry, go.
I was just going to say, Victoria like goes to stammer, but can't even get the stammer out. Like she mouths a few like start of like words, but the words of Maria stunned her as she like contemplated in her own circumstance, a bit of her own narcissism. And so she looks to the girl as she does it and then can't think of something to say as she organizes them. And that familiar simmering din of decisions and information and grief starts to rise up behind her unseen, but like heard and felt.
If you are not ready, if you need some time, I will let them know to leave you be. The, the weight of what's happened must surely be difficult. The others will want to hear from you. There were a couple other people from House Rivkan that were here. The young blacksmith boy, among some others, as well as those two that have come. And you know that she would be referring to Amon and Yosef. Take your time, but when you are ready, we will be waiting. Unless there's anything else, she'll kind of give a light bow and start moving very slowly towards the door.
Yeah, at mention of those two, she knows what those words intimate, and she'll move towards the door abreast of Sir Volta. But we'll like look down either corridor to see if either are about, and if not, she'll ask Maria if they can see her or she can see them, and tell the old dames that they'll have my answer soon.
I'll let them know that you're prepared to see them. I'll have them await you at once in the courtyard.
And she'll give a smile and a nod and go to say thanks, but there's a flash of her father's tutelage, and so she leaves it at the smile and the inclination of the head. It doesn't feel right to her, this woman who's probably nursed her at times or played with her as a child, to act in that way, but it was almost like it was a muscle memory or reflex.
Yeah, she'll almost wait expectantly for the response, and then seeing that it does not come, will just smile slightly, though perhaps in a pained smile more than anything else. And you can't tell if it's at the grief or at the response, or lack thereof. But she'll give a nod and turn away. Sir Valter, next to you at the door, will place a hand on your shoulder for just the briefest moment and give a nod of understanding. Um, and Maria will head to the courtyard to gather those of House Rivkan that are waiting here, after hearing the news as well, waiting for you to arrive.
She will smile at the old man and move closer to him a moment, though not go to fully embrace him as she'd intended, stopping herself. And she looks back into the room. Time seems to slow a little as she regards like the inverted cloak shrouded over the glamourn blade. And she looks back to him, her face a little harder than the one that was softening as she came closer. I would speak to Master Amon and Joseph. I wish you to attend me there, Sir Volta.
Of course, my lady. He'll give a light bow.
She goes to say, I'm afraid, but stops herself, and her jaw tightens. And she'll move back into the chamber and take the thing and put it at the side of her shirt, like this almost feverish desire to like hide it or keep safe it. She doesn't even really know why. And she'll move with him to go and seek out the ancient elf and the furthest Templar.
Walter will see the blade at your side, covered within the shrouded cloak, and his eyes will kind of raise an eyebrow at that, but he'll say nothing. It's not his place to question or make comment in this moment. And the sound of the two footsteps will echo through the stone hall till you'll come to the doors from where these dormitories or so are for the people living and training, and they will open into the wider courtyard. On this side of the oratory, there's many buildings scattered here, some towering cathedrals and some small abbeys. This particular place is sort of somewhere in the middle of mixed stature, not quite small, not quite grand either. You'll see immediately out in the courtyard some of the scattered folk you know came here from Rivkan as well. And then amongst them, you see Amen and Yosef. Uh, Start with Amen. What have you been doing in this courtyard? Has you been waiting to hear if VIKTYRIA will see you?
So Amon sits cross-legged, like up on a pillar or something like that, unmoving, eyes closed, and he has like in his long-fingered hands this like deck of cards, and he like thinks, and like with a little gesture, like one will flip over and like reveal itself to him, though his eyes are still closed. He's like looking at a tarot. It's one of the things he took from Rivkan, and that he's been doing there for a while. It's childish. It doesn't do anything. There's no real power to it, not like the magic that he uses, but he finds it interesting, at least. And it's the Fool. It's let go of preconceived notions and remain open to change. He sort of like barely shakes his head, open to change. How wise, now in the face of this upheaval. The next is the Hanged Man. Let go of your past. The future welcomes you with a bounty of growth and change. The future and the past are one. A bounty of growth and change. How generous, he thinks to himself. Perhaps this destruction and crisis can be the beginning of something great. Humans are best forged in fire. And then a third, the Five of Swords. Challenge the pessimism of others around you by evoking their higher nature. And he scoffs. It's like a unusual gesture, and those around him would see just this like sort of wrinkling of the nose, which is for him like a sort of the equivalent to screaming out loud. Higher nature. What higher nature has an ape? They're ruled by instinct, vice, and self-interest, even the highest of them. And he like flicks, and the cards will like shuffle and put themselves back into a deck. And he'll place that into one of the many pockets of his robes and sit there and wait.
And Yosef, as you sit in the courtyard, Amon above you, to the side, as he always seems to be, for a reminder of his place over yours, despite your watch over him. You are here in the courtyard as well.
Yes, Yosef stands statue-like, not moving, except for his jaw working backwards and forwards as he thinks over the calamitous events that have preceded their rapid travel to find VIKTYRIA. And he lifts in his hand a staff, a dark staff, made of wood from the southern continent, but shod in iron and resembling perhaps a slender column itself, and lets it fall onto the flagstones, and it rings out. He said, "Damn this waiting! Haven't they told her what has happened? We must move." Yeah, his eyes flick over to AMON, and he looks at him studying his cards and sees that, as ever, he appears calm and aloof from the situation. And again, this sort of exacerbates his own irritation, and he strides back and forward and begins to pass over in his mind what must be done, mostly to busy it as he thinks back on what he has witnessed and the responsibilities perhaps he feels he has not met. Always such a difficult challenge of balancing responsibilities and judgment, to know what to do in a situation where so much is at stake. Your loyalties to the family, his role to guard and oversee the elf and see that the elf does not slip towards darkness, and his oath to the people as a whole, to stand by and be an exemplar of the qualities of the four pillars. And I guess if he hears some movement occurring, he'll look up in expectation.
Amon will like raise a perfect eyebrow, a tiny amount at the noise, and like open eyes and look at Yosef and say, "You wish to leave. That is what you wish dearly. The more value that you ascribe to this one thing, the less valuable all other things become." And he'll close his eyes again, knowing that these sort of phrases drive Yosef insane.
Yes, elf, I realize it's called making a decision.
Decision
Tell
will be
me.
made by the lady when she is ready to do so.
Then why look over those loose pages of some strange book you carry about with you? What do you hope to see there? I say, like, gesturing at the cards you were looking over.
A glimpse of what could be. Entertainment. We have been sitting here for some time.
I think with some interest, he'll kind of walk over and he'll say, a glimpse. And what do those eyes of yours see? What is it you glimpse amongst the smoke and the fire?
Symbols. This, and he'll like extend his hand, and the deck will like appear in it as if from nowhere. These are symbols that we ascribe meaning to. There is no power in them, but nonetheless, it can be useful to examine your own thoughts. I could read for you if you wish, but it is magic. And there'll be like just in the very corner of his smile, this like hint of being cheeky.
Bah. Go on then. Let us amuse ourselves with your trickery. Though it is as if a book, the pages, broken from the spine and disordered. A game for children, perhaps.
In a manner of speaking, Amon will say, thinking that like humans created this and the ways that my people have to see into the future, you would know them to be real if you saw them. And he'll like flick his wrist, and again there'll be like a and the deck will shuffle itself. Draw from the top.
I think Joseph looks to see if anyone's coming. He doesn't want to be caught in the middle of playing at this game. But seeing perhaps that no one has arrived as yet, he'll lean down and instead of grabbing from the top, he'll grab from the middle of the deck and hold it so he can see it first. He'll say, so do you attempt to guess?
Attempt. He sort of smiles a little bit. It's like perfect smile that's like all light, but there's no light in the eyes. And he'll like look into Yosef's eyes for a moment, and then turn his head ever so slightly to the side. The devil.
Yeah, I think perhaps Amon's keen senses will notice the reaction, the flickers across his face, and he'll say, perhaps. But what does it mean?
You should
Tell
let
me.
go of your inhibitions. Allow yourself to express who you are.
I thought you did not like it when I yelled at you, Amon.
Yelling is what animals do. Howling. Expressing yourself is different.
Well, I attempt to make words in the noise. I am yet to hear an animal make words, my friend. And I'll sort of slowly carry the card over and then flick it over, revealing what was on the other side.
I have heard animals making noises and words for hundreds of years.
I think Joseph stands up and gives a steady look, somewhat menacing even, but then terminates it with a smile. and takes up his vigilant post again, waiting for VIKTYRIA to arrive.
As the
Yeah, I'm on
tense stare down between the two happens for that brief moment before the smile peels back and levity restored. I see some others start to work their way in towards the courtyard. You would know that these are the people who have come from House Rivkan, who happen to be here on business or otherwise in the midst of the tragedy and have thus been spared the slaughter. Amongst them, a young boy, Brant, you would know. He nearly finished his apprenticeship to the blacksmith, though he was unable to complete the final ritual before the day of doom has happened. And among the others, an older woman named Emma. She was a farmer, and another man, Idris, who was a criminal but has been paroled and has been restored now to civility, though he works here as an assistant now for the time being until a different decision can be made. And Maria, VIKTYRIA's handmaiden, whom you would know and recognize, has kind of ushered in these other people, and it's not too long after that until you would hear the footsteps approaching, and you would see VIKTYRIA and her vigilant guard Walter right next to her on her right, approaching. And VIKTYRIA, you see this gathering, the small, humble remains of what used to be your proud house, the mere 8 people now that surround you, that would make up your house, and they all look to you expectantly.
I think in the pause, Yosef once again raises his staff, as much a badge of office as the other, like the crown, the sword, and the cloak, and he lets it ring out again against the flagstones, and he says, "AMON is fallen to the foe to the south. House Teron has laid it low. We come for the remaining daughter of House Rivkan, VIKTYRIA. You now stand at the apex of your house, and responsibility has fallen to you." And again, he'll punctuate that with another ringing blow of the iron shod staff against the flagstone.
She feels like it's a public, doom-laden sentence being pronounced in similar eerie fashion to how the dames had addressed her before the swearing. And like Maria's words earlier, it stocks her into a bit of silence as she stands before them. "I hearken to the call and will answer it."
Amon looks between Yosef and VIKTYRIA and all the others with this sort of keen interest, like he's outside of the situation, though he is not. And he looks at it as if he's floating above it, and sort of watches it as if it's a story unfolding.
Having made pronouncement and fulfilled the obligations of his office, Yosef's shoulders slump slightly, and his face, while not truly softening, does lose some of its harder edges as he looks at VIKTYRIA, and across his mind plays various images of scenes by the lake shore where they've all shared time. He's overseen her growing from a small child And again, it's hard for him not to look at her now and see her as much younger than she truly is. And he feels the weight of, again, the paralyzing doubt over whether he has failed in his responsibilities and where his obligations truly lie. For the human part of him and his heart owes great allegiance to the house Rivkan, but the badge of his office commands that he also be prepared to stand aside from such allegiances and take care of the people as a whole and enforce the law wherever it must be administered. But I think, yes, softening his posture somewhat, he moves towards VIKTYRIA and holds out an arm, perhaps wishing to provide some support or sympathy, but instead he holds it out and disguises it as a way to help her down from the steps, as if she needs it. But it's a way to disguise some human sympathy after such a pronouncement.
Yeah, her father would not have allowed such a thing, but she takes the offered hand, needing it more than she knew before she did, and will descend to address the 8.
Amon will like rise from his seat and seemingly like pour somehow like mist down onto the ground, moving like with bizarre smoothness, and stand with the others.
Her house and people are all but fallen, those who are left scattered wide. I mean, to reclaim them and our home. But I'll not hold any of you to your oath now, for the hard, dark path ahead. And her voice begins to shake as she says this, and she has to purse her lips and swallow and regain her composure.
Amon will send a message into her mind silently. You must control yourself. Mastering others is child play, but mastering yourself is strength, and they require you to be strong.
The thought coalesces, and all the words coalesce in her mind's ear, and she nods to them, but does so publicly as well. Her eyes go wide for a moment, and she speaks further. If it is any of your wish now to go, then go. In the face of this, I cannot ask, demand what is to come of you that is for yourselves. But you know what I mean. You know what I mean to do. And she looks amongst them to see if any of those people will leave.
Yosef brings himself up to his full height and catches all these tattered remnants of House Rivkan in his glance and says, "Though castles may be brought low, oaths shall always stand. They are the pillars of our world."
There's a stirred silence across the other members of the house, the common folk, tied much less fervently to the cause than the ties of blood and oaths from the knights and lady. And they'll stir for a moment, unsure of how to respond. And then after a short time, Brand will be the first to speak. He'll approach slightly, though still giving a wide berth appropriate to your status. And he'll give a light bow and say, "Because of your house, I nearly finished my training, mastered a craft. learned many things. Though my training is yet not complete, it is still much within myself to owe service to your house after the training that it's given me. I will continue to serve. And after the first Brant does this, a couple of the other civilian level people here will kind of nod in agreement. One man, who you would know, his name is Idris, seems less fervent in his commitment, though he will not publicly disagree, nor will he leave. He'll stand sort of at the side back of the crowd, kind of just nodding along, uncomfortably, but he'll make no objection.
Amon will make a point to turn his head rather slowly and just like take a look at this person with his sort of shining eyes for a moment. And he wants to make sure that this man sees him before he looks back to the lady.
Yeah, his eyes will meet yours, and he'll visibly kind of shift his weight from leg to leg uncomfortably as you stare, making no attempt to hide his discomfort under your elven gaze. He views you much in the way that a human might view a dragon or in some other ancient dire species. He does not know what to make of you and makes no attempt to hide his concern. But again, he will refuse to speak and will say nothing aloud, though his body language will speak volumes in its stead. Walter will turn to you, VIKTYRIA, and he'll kneel down in like a deep oath-sworn vow. My oaths have already been sworn to your protection, my lady. That for all time I will stand at your side to ensure that you are safe. And while there is no need for vows to be said again that have already been said, I reaffirm my commitment to you, to this house, that I will forever stand vigil to it and to its people and to its lady most of all. And I'll like remain in this like deep kneeling bow.
She'll move to like help him rise and say, "I thank you, Sir Volta, and I accept your oath." And she says it like in an almost childlike way, like the sentence is unwieldy.
Yeah, he'll give a nod and a friendly smile, which will break after he's risen, belying the sort of understanding of your station, and that it will take you some time before these things are comfortable. And his deep, grim show of devotion will break back into a friendly demeanor, though still ever vigilant as he always is. And then he'll continue. If you are to be proper lady of the house, then surely the ceremony will need to be done. And he won't move, but his eyes will kind of glance down to where the blade is still hidden under the cloak at your side. I can send for Corland. He will be able to officiate the ceremony and to ensure that all things are done within the proper boundaries of law and tradition. If it pleases you.
It does. AMON may have fallen, but it is not destroyed. It's east beyond the mountains, waiting for us to come home. And things will be done in the proper ways of tradition and law. And she says that with her bitterness gone to anger now, severe words, and speaking, of course, of House Tierra, though she will not utter their names.
Walter will pull one of the men aside quickly in the crowd and will whisper some words to him and send him away to fetch Corland for you. You would know while he resides here, he's been one of your tutors here at the oratory, that he is a member of the house all the same, and was here until your service and training was complete. And that person will run off to go fetch him.
It is right that all things should be done as is proper. But we should look well on the road to Caermorn. For House Terran also knows where you have been secluded away here, Lady VIKTYRIA, and they will be looking to pull the root of House Rivkan for once and all. Time is always an issue, and we lack the soldiers and the force to make a stand against them. And I think he would also look across to AMON, usually in a sort of in the habit of bouncing off AMON and reacting to his counsel also, and relying on his acuity of intellect to either affirm or challenge his propositions.
Amon will look. He's looking at the crowd of people, and he's trying to decide who is going to stay and who is going to go. And he thinks that although humans are all about self-interest, that these ones are more afraid to stay. And so he's satisfied with that. But he's been listening here as well. And he will say, the sooner from this place and far from Caermorn, the safer that we will be. They will certainly have more agents searching for you, lady.
She I guess already knew that because of her studies in history and had been told about it and warned about it and all of this kind of stuff. But as it actually happens, as it's actually happening in the end, because of the elf speaking it in this situation, now she understands it and knows that feeling of what it is when a house is, like the Templar described, pulled out root and stem. That fear that, like, the road now, rather than a byway between realms, the place to foster trade and kinship, now is potentially murderous, dangerous gauntlet, no matter where she might go, given that all the enemy need do is pluck out her life and their victory against ancient rivals absolute. And the elf probably sees that realization processing but behind her eyes, painfully slow for his own pace of comprehension of things. And at that, she looks to the Templar and the house elf, says, I would speak more on this, but I must give my words to the dame.
Very well. Simply nod your head, my lady, and I shall begin preparations for the road.
She nods her head then at that, and she looks to Master AMON and says, if you will accompany me to the Grand Damery.
Of course. And he'll begin to, again, sort of seemingly float across the ground. He's definitely making steps, but they are totally silent, and the road doesn't seem to move enough as he moves.
She reverts to the practice tone that she would have adopted under Amon's tutelage of her when she's reciting place names, geographies, or lineages. And in this rote kind of metered speech, she says, every road from here is dangerous, Master Amon. Every path to pick will be a hard one. I am not sure of which one to take. Though I do have my strategies, and she says that in the way like that she's been asked this before in earlier tutelage before she came to the oratory. Like she almost as if she's under academic inquisition again, but that feels more comfortable to her than walking in her current robe away from those people who she's just accepted their oaths to doom, pretty much, as far as she feels at the moment.
You must remember what I taught you, that we are shaped by our thoughts and we become what we think. And you think that you will lose. You think that you will die. And if you think that, then it will be so.
You are right, of course, always. But
there are many things to consider. And there are allies still for your house.
House VIKTYRIA, over our staunch allies and friends. If Tierra would be so bold to, and she says the word Tierra, and she begins to grow angry and dark for a moment, and then says as she like turns another stone corner with the elf, they'll surely be in danger. Tierra may conquer them next. Knowing this, we are bound by ancient oath to go to them and offer what we can in their defense, as they have done in ours for hundreds of years. And as she says that in the tone of as if that's why she believes that she is doomed, because she's going with no army to help a small house against a big enemy who's proven to be effective and ruthless now.
Yeah, Amon closes his eyes as he walks, and then opens them again. If you chase 2 rabbits, you will catch neither. It is important that you are clear what we must do. There are many thousands of words that you can say, but they will be hollow. The only one that matters is the one that brings clarity. If we go to save this house with 10 of us, our chances of success are slim. I would say unacceptable. It is possible that the house has not been attacked. It is also possible that we must consider that House VIKTYRIA is aligned with House Tierran. I do not think it likely, but it is possible. You must think of your people now, lady, and yourself, and how you can survive.
What do you know of the ruins east of the Widow Peaks? And she says that like whispering some like hidden gossip or like some profane thing behind the nuns' backs to the other girls.
Yeah, Amon thinks that there aren't enough pages for what he knows about ruins. And he thinks about how much to say and what is useful to say. It is an old place. You say that a sickness came there. It's possible it lingers still. But it is considered to be haunted. And that in itself can be useful. Men are unlikely to go there. Men are superstitious.
She nods at that, letting on her meaning that Tierra might not chase them to a place like that. If every road is dangerous, and if every house, even loyal ones or perceivably loyal ones, could possibly be in league with the enemy and we don't know, what place could be safer than one that our enemies would fear to tread?
I do not know what lingers there, what dwells there. Certainly there will be criminals. And he sort of does this gesture, which is like the equivalent to like somebody like putting their hand to the side of their head as if like it doesn't matter, but it's just like a flick of a finger, which is about as like dramatic as his gestures get.
The border guard, some 100 strong mounted warriors, all a fearsome force to be left languishing in the foothills when they could be east amongst the princes. The nuns know they desire this place, but do not have the means or wherewithal to take it. They are a force as yet unclaimed that could be heeded to. And she goes into like a rhetoric of what he would have instructed her about, like manipulations and numbers and supply and things like that, in this kind of litany type fashion again, as if she's almost like stumbling over herself to justify her decisions to him, reverting once again to that manner of tutelage. Now they're in like the isolated confines of these looming stone walls that they pass.
It is wise for you to understand that when you lead, if you can make those beneath you think that they are doing it themselves, which you did here, and he like points or gestures rather back to the room they were just in, you gave them the choice, and they have chosen. That will make them more loyal to you. If you can do that here, and gather more to you in this fashion, they will think that they are doing it. And that is important to men.
Perhaps those men might be moved to support a move east. If they were to be judged by the public to not tread where a young woman dares. She says that in a way like maybe it should have half a question mark at the end.
Yeah, the tiniest corner of Amon's mouth like will raise into a smile. You have not forgotten your lessons.
She gives a brief touch of her fingertips up to the corner of her cheek and chin where the scars from her fall are, instinctively, and then like puts her hand quickly back to her side while she walks, remembering a dozen canings or such from other servants, and embarrassed at her lapse in poise in front of the house elf, and that he knows and sees much, little known what is obvious.
The conversation will be interrupted as you finally make it to your destination. The desk of where these kind of hallway will open up into a lobby area where various nuns and other church assistants are kind of moving about the room, taking papers and other containers in and out. One of the women leading will see you, the two of you, and will stop yelling orders to a couple of the other assistants to move this thing here and to clean up this area there. And she'll tell them to continue on to work as they have, and she'll approach. You would know this woman. His name is Catherine. You would have seen her before, though your interactions would have been few. She would greet you. Ah, VIKTYRIA, and I'm sorry. She'll look to you, Amon. I'm not sure that I've had the pleasure.
Amon.
Of course. And you would see, with your elven perception, her arm would twitch as if to go shake your hand or some other greeting, though she'll pause and stop and will not do so. Perhaps, given what you are, she fears you, or perhaps some other thing clouds her mind and stops her action. It's difficult to be sure.
Yeah,
I'm together. Sorry, go ahead.
He smiles at that and then continues his name. Akormanet, Hasofet. And he'll like list 10 or so, just looking at this woman. He finds this very interesting that she wanted to go and shake his hand. Sort of like when you're sitting outside at like a cafe and a bird lands on your table. It's sort of like keen interest. He like turns his head to the side to like watch her as he keeps listing names.
Yeah, she'll remain somewhat poised as you continue to list name after name after name. The slight discomfort that initiated the conversation will fade. Either she's gotten used to it quickly, or she's forced herself to appear within better visage towards you, so as to not give up too much power to those who are still within her area or her domain, which she commands.
Yeah, he'll finish, and then just like incline his head. This is her place, and it's important for men to feel like they're in control.
Yeah, she'll look to you, VIKTYRIA. Am I to understand that you've come to a decision then, if you've come to see us?
Of course. Yes. I would
see.
address the Grand Dame and others whom I must. I give my decision to them, as is fitting.
I will go and let them know that you've arrived. They will see you when they're ready to. And she'll go
stand.
about. So go
Oh,
ahead.
sorry. I was just going to say, VIKTYRIA stands like not shirking back away from the social space, but like standing in a demanding kind of fashion that she would have been scared to adopt around the dames before all this, at risk of beating or a litany of re-education.
Yeah, you see this the shortest glimpse of perhaps she would move to perhaps reprimand you, or to question your sudden confidence and status, and then she'll remember the circumstances and your newfound station, and will find herself unable to command over you anymore, as she no longer has the station to do so in these situations. But it takes time for habit to adjust. She'll go to speak, but then stop.
A childish pettiness comes over Victoria as she wishes the woman had slapped her or the like, and watches her move.
Yeah, she'll move with a slightest touch of frustration, though it will not taint her otherwise now calm demeanor. She'll go, yelling at some of the other assistants to pick up the pace and to move and to do this and that. Perhaps taking out that latent frustration. Perhaps it's just how she operates with everybody. And then she'll move through the set of doors at the back to go deliver the message. It's not much longer after that until a messenger will be sent from the room and will come to see you, and they'll nod and say, "The Grand Dame and the other of the council will see you in about 30 minutes. They will be able to see you. They have some business to attend to, a current meeting."
We are somewhat pressed for time.
The messenger will be startled by the directness of the response, and he'll look at you with that same look that like a retail worker will look at you when you ask to speak with their boss at something above their pay grade, just with eyes that say that he does not know what to say, what to respond with, and he'll just kind of nod and say, I'm sorry."
You will tell them that we are pressed for time. It is very important.
Of course. My apologies, Master Elf. And he'll nod. Perhaps he would not have allowed such a request to be made by most people, but he will allow it from you nonetheless. And he'll return back through the doors. A couple minutes later, he will return. if you'll follow me, they will make time at the nearest convenience.
Victoria will move forward with him and try and walk in front of him if she knows the area from her time scrubbing the floors or scouring ancient murals or the like, and will walk briskly forth.
He goes to leisurely guide you there, and then seeing your quick pace quickly passing him, he'll have to then take a couple steps in a light jog to catch back up, quickening his pace nervously to match yours, in order that he might be the person to lead you there and not vice versa. And once you approach the actual doors of the Grand Damery, they will he'll pause for a moment to go in to ensure that whatever's being discussed is silenced before you're brought in to see them. And he'll come back out of the doors and he'll look to VIKTYRIA and then to AMON and then back to VIKTYRIA, and he'll say, in almost a whisper, as if somehow AMON would not hear, being right next to you as he is, it's customary that you announce your decision to them alone. He'll say, and then kind of like scratch at the back of his head, like it's clear that he's nervous to suggest it, but that orders from them are greater than orders from you.
I will remain here.
Oh, he'll like breathe a sigh of relief at that, expecting a greater fight to be put. And then he'll open the wide wooden double doors into the large, grand audience chamber, and kind of give a slight bow to you, to VIKTYRIA, to enter.
She'll do so. I don't know. She does not wish to offend them or make like sour relations between them. So she'll leave the cloaked Glamour blade and such with AMON before she goes in.
Yeah, you enter in. You've been in this chamber before, but never under direct audience to these people, and never while it's full and in session. It's always been to clean or to perform other menial tasks as part of your studies and as part of your training here. So it's this strange combination of familiar and unfamiliar. The place is known, but the circumstances so vastly foreign. There's kind of these large sort of walls before the like chairs of the council and the Grand Dame sit above, looking down into this chamber. An oppressive symbol of their station over you while in this room. Many of them wear these like veils over their faces that their like identities and distinct personalities are masked, and they form into this sort of eerie, almost ghostly sort of crowd of nameless, faceless elders who see over you. But the Grand Dame will sit amongst the center of them, unmasked, face clear and visible, standing out prominently against the backdrop of other formless men. And she'll kind of beckon you in to stand at the center. Through your time here, you have gone through much training, and the days of your vows were meant to be mere days ago, and yet now you are here to see a great decision to be made, whether you will take your vows and go through the place you have trained your life to be, or perhaps another thing. Your vows are set for 4 days' time, but perhaps those arrangements might not need to be made. Speak. What have you come to say?
She goes to speak immediately as like the words have been running around in her head, but she remembers her father's tutelage and stands silent before them, a a moment or two longer than is comfortable. And at the first sign of weight shifting from one of them in their seat, that's when she'll speak. Honoured mothers, wise dames, I thank you for what you have taught me in my time here. I will not forget it. But just as this church serves the crown, so too must I place my duty above the faith. You all know of the destruction that has fallen my house, that it is not total, and I will not let it be so while I still live. I go to serve, but not bitter, and with much thankfulness in my heart do I decline the vows of eternity, and will take up the sigil of my people.
The woman will return the eerie silence, the waiting, the pause for just a moment longer than is comfortable, and will extend it even past that until she can see the return back to you. You're not sure if it's out of spite to return the small, seemingly insignificant slight, or if that's just the manner of their operation. And she'll look kind of across to the other faceless dames who accompany her.
My people are sore pressed, and we must leave this place at once, with haste. I must go west to the Lady Jamie. She will have sympathy for my plight, and as a young sister, mayhaps take me in. Who knows what the future can hold, but our great God. And with his blessing, I leave you. And she bows and goes to turn, make her way out.
The dames will say nothing. They will not react. The grand dame's face will not twist or make any movements. This like still eerie gaze until you turn away from it, breaking the line of sight. And then as you make it to the doors, you'll hear the slightest whisper come from behind you. And you'll see some of the attendants and servants begin to move. It's as if your message is simultaneously understood and unheard. It's you're not quite sure what to make of it at first. And then one of the attendants will approach you as you leave in the room back where you've met back up with AMON, and will approach you. The dames have heard what you said and have taken it into consideration, my lady. Your name will be removed from the records, and you will be removed from this place. Sadly, and I'll kind of scratch his head, speaking with much less authority than the dames prior had done. It is against policy for the oratory to take political sides for the houses, so we will be unable to house you here. We can provide you with some food to make it to wherever your next destination lies, but you must leave at the first available opportunity. I'm sorry.
What food you can spare for our passage west to House Baldwin, I'd be appreciative for. My thanks.
The attendants will bring some to your chambers at the earliest opportunity. If there's anything else that you need before you see your way out, then please let one of us know, and we will do what we can. He'll say out of obligation and not out of any desire to help, genuinely.
A cart
And then we'll
and a horse. 2 horses. Something that we can use to bring this food that you're giving us. I assume that it will be enough to feed all of us, at least for the length of our journey. There's much to spare here, and he'll like look around at like the insane like gold trimmed everything of the oratory.
I'll have to have it requisitioned and approved by the attendants here, but I will submit the paperwork for you to have it done so.
Amon will say to the guy, "If you would like, I could speak to these attendants myself. I tend to do a better job of explaining myself in person. Much gets lost in translation."
My apologies, but the requisition must come from within the oratory members themselves.
Very
They'll
good.
say with like a maddening bureaucracy.
Amon will cut across him and say, "You shall not disappoint me then."
Of course, he'll say, and then turn to move to move away from you to see these things done before any more requests or beratement can be given.
VIKTYRIA will move swiftly now and take up once more the conversation. Actually, no, she won't. Some eerie feeling has descended over and she won't speak any more words into these stone walls that seem to echo more eerily now as like she departs at a brisk pace, moving to seek out Yosef and get the people to begin moving.
Yeah, it wouldn't take much time before you would be able to make your way back out to the courtyard where Yosef and the other members of House Rivkan are waiting. You would see upon your return that in addition to the members that have been there before, that one more has now joined them. You would know this man as Corland, sometimes called Wise Corland. He's the man who helped to teach you through the early days back at Kaer Morhen, and has come here to ease the transition from you from the house into this place. This is the man that was summoned for by Walter and the other civilians, who was to oversee your ceremonial ascendancy into the nobility and into rightful place as lady of the house. And he would see you as you approach. Ah, Lady VIKTYRIA. I've been told that you have made your choice and that you would choose to take up place at the top of your house, to sit atop it and bring it back to what glory that it may have had.
You are right, Corland. I will take up the mantle of our house and reclaim it if I may.
Ah, glad to hear it. If that is the case, then perhaps before we leave, we should arrange to have you officially brought in as lady, that we might give you the proper station and dignity that these people have sworn service to. It would not be right for them to serve you if you have not taken up the blade, as is tradition to the family.
This maddening bureaucracy now for Amon is becoming like a real issue. Like every time that they are about to leave, there's another thing that they have to do, and they have to spend another hour here. And every hour that they are here is an hour that House Tiaran approaches. And so he lets out what to him is like a thunderous sigh, but it's really just like a.
VIKTYRIA will turn and like place out her arms expectantly for him to return the Glamorn blade. And when she receives it, she'll bear it, but not unsheath it, of course, but bear it before Corland and say, "I have taken up the Glamorn blade and heard the oath of our people. And once I've heard yours, Corland, we'll be away from this place at haste. You know what awaits us."
He'll nod and approach you with the blade kind of across your hands. And he'll place one hand on the scabbard of it and the other on the handle as you present it towards. And he'll like slide it mostly out of the way of the scabbard. And say, then we should see it born in blood, as is tradition. And he'll kind of like look to the others, mostly just the peasantry. And Sir Walter will immediately like kneel down next to you, along with Maria, and then the others the more common folk will see this and kind of hurriedly kneel down as well. And he'll begin these like phrases that seem to go on and on. All these gallantries and formalities of the house, ready to bestow it upon you, unless you say otherwise.
Brant, see that some of the supplies are put in saddlebags in case we need to leave the cart behind.
VIKTYRIA says to Corland while the people are at activity, I should perform the rite here. She looks about questioningly.
And his eyes will kind of dart to Amon and then back to you. If you wish me to arrange a formal ceremonial place, I can do so for the evening. But, and his eyes will dart once again back to Amon and then back to you.
It's
if
not
haste is important, then the ceremony itself is more important than where it takes place.
She nods. Soon, but not here, Corland. It does not feel. And then she cuts short of explaining herself to him. And then looks across the courtyard to where Iosif is organizing the logistics of their departure.
As you say, lady, but remember, until you have sworn the oath and followed through with the ceremony, you'll have no power to treat with the other lords. He'll say, and despite it being like untrue, it's clear that he believes that that is the case.
Yeah, legally or law-wise, that's the case, and she feels that like his words are right in her blood. Like it's not right to do. Like there is some meaning and power in the ritual, even for all intents and purposes. It just seems like an archaic function, but some like there's dis-ease here for her, and it feels wrong. She knows she must swear a vow of eternity today, but it won't be here. And so she will like seek to gather the people and swiftly make a feint west by the afternoon, and then double back by evening east towards the brooding peaks. And if she can spy the moon that night, it's then that she'd call those who'd sworn to her to gather around, and for them alone, and not the watching and listening walls of the oratory. For them would she perform the rite.
Coland will resheath the half of the blade that had been drawn, and then place it back into your hands. Let me know when the moment is right then, and I will see that it is done. He'll say, with the slightest tone of indignance at like having to start and then stop this whole thing so suddenly. But he'll make no further mention of it, and he'll go to assist with the others who are preparing with what needs to be done. It's not further after until the attendants will come from the oratory to let you know that they have in fact gathered a small supply cart and 2 horses with which to carry it, that your food and other supplies might be stowed and brought more conveniently alongside you, though they will provide nothing other than the food and the cart. No further gear or anything will be allowed to be given, as to aid a house with weaponry is against the political laws for them to do so.
And what of shelter? Depending on what time of year it is, I would be keen to secure some kind of shelter, even if it's only oiled cloth tarps or the like, to ward against rain.
Yeah, would we be able to barter with them for stuff like that, even if we have to reimburse them?
Yeah, I imagine that you could make a deal upon like credit of your house in order to like purchase through them, small like
Sundries.
tents and things like that with which to shelter yourself if the weather takes a turn.
Yosef would also apply certain religious leverage, asking them if they would countenance the eclipsing of one house, the line of disciples eclipsing the other, and so creating fractures within the temple of our religion. So to let them know that it's their religious responsibility to preserve VIKTYRIA as the inheritor of one of the disciples, and so doing the lineage of our Savior.
Yeah, with the added pressure of history on your side, they would give in to the additional requisition and would provide you with some tents and other means of shelter to provide yourself with during the journeys, and they would load those onto the cart as well. They're fairly meager, not out of any slight to you, but simply out of what's available to give within the stores at any moment.
VIKTYRIA will thank them twice, meaningfully. And I imagine like she's had at least some friendly relations with like some similar souls here at this place, and she'll look for them as she goes to leave and give them a last glance and a smile between those few before like she'll go from the yard.
And the oratory itself would be surprisingly callous to your departure, though the people that you have maintained close friendships within, the others in study, and some of the lower rungs of the oratorial ladder will bid you a genuine farewell and best wishes to your house as you seek now this mission of reclamation.
Savior, smile upon you and your workings.
And to you as well. And with
Perhaps the Savior will, for we flee before a dark and dangerous foe to find freedom and justice. Such themes are not known to us. Is that right?
he has broken chains and undone injustice before. I see no reason why he would not do it again.
And then I would, Joseph would soberly nod his respectful thanks and begin to ride out.
And with that, Lady VIKTYRIA and her meager ensemble would leave the walls of the oratory. The guards of this place would see you across whichever river that you would deem to exit from, and see that the gates are open to allow your company to leave. And with that, I think we'll take a short bio break here before we split into the second half of the session.
Rad. All right, I'm back in.
All right, be right back.
Cheers.
All right, I'm back.
Good stuff, Jeff. It's always cool entering into another world, isn't it? Those first few steps.
Yeah, like opening the first couple of pages of a book, like a setting you're not familiar with.
Mhm. Yeah, the first session, and especially the first part of the first session, can always be a little difficult because there's like so much to like cement in to existence and to like get across. But hopefully it's well on its way.
Yeah, especially when I guess we've done a little bit of groundwork setting the scene, but it's like how much you introduce that or go over that sort of exposition. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, 'cause it's pretty cool to just dive straight into it and then sort of let the threads come together as well. You know?
Mm.
Yeah, I think it can be tempting to try to like set all the entirety
Front end
of
it.
the scene up at the very
Yeah.
front and like kind of explain the process. But I mean, you guys are all smart and good players. Like I don't think we need to like do that. I think it's plenty easy to kind of let it pop up in the world as we see it rather than try to like speak at it from top down.
So I think I didn't hear. I kind of dropped out. I didn't hear all of your strategy you were talking to Amon about, but I think it was basically the same.
Yeah, I was just gonna ask, as far as sort of a quick meta discussion between you guys as far as what the plan is now.
The way that I see it is that we're going to pretend to go west, go down, cross, and then go up to where the border guard are,
Yeah.
and try and convince them to join us, and then go to the ruins.
Yeah, that
So head west as
definitely.
if you were to make for House Gawain up at G in the northwest, but not actually go there, and then double around down south across the river at the Rivermen.
So we're actually at the Grand Oratory, are we?
Yep.
That's
Yes.
right. I gotcha. Okay.
Yeah, so heading towards F on that little map we've got, a feint, and then by night crossing over north of the Rivermen and heading towards E.
Mm-hmm.
I figure like our enemy will hear of it and then eventually learn of the feint, but if they want to pursue us into that place, that's the best place I think that I would want to face them rather than on the road or by river where we can just be like overwhelmed by number.
Perhaps we could swap the cart for a boat.
That's a wise idea, and we may well have to.
We would be going upstream, but it depends on like how strong the flow is, I guess, this time of the year.
The Rivermen are skilled. If we have the coin or trade to barter with them, they'll see it across. It's keeping it a secret that will be the true cost.
Yeah. And how close by the Grand Oratory we would have to go. Maybe we'd have to embark south of the Grand Oratory and cross through the hills. Just in case anyone's watching out or they've paid anyone to watch for us.
Yep.
Yeah, I think that's a great plan. That's what occurred to me as well.
But I'm happy to meta discuss like another plan. That's just the plan that I came up and tried to like run by the elf to see if it passed muster. I guess really I would like for you guys to say what the plan is. Because that's just the first plan that came to me, but I don't think it's the best one it could possibly be. Just kind of tick a few boxes for me.
Well, we could probably have a kind of
Power
fireside discussion about.
Okay. Because I thought about the Northern Lord and his mercenaries and trying to cajole House Baldwin and come from that direction, but then it's all out in the open and we're easy targets there, and I fear the road. But yeah, it's
a question of like how much Sierra knows about you. Like if they think you've already taken the oath or whatever, then they don't have to do anything. But if they think you haven't, then they're probably sending dudes here. Although I don't know if they could attack the oratory.
And they're probably waiting for us on the other side of the bridge, dressed as fishers or polars or such.
Yep.
I think that if you're House Tierra and there's a 0.001% chance that this girl hasn't said her vows or could take up the mantle of the house still or wield the Glenmorn blade, then you'd certainly spend resources to ensure it, just to alleviate that minuscule doubt, because it wouldn't be an oversight, I think. So I think we should prepare for the worst and expect that that they are acting against us. That's my instinct. Like, what do you think?
I think it's likely that we'll encounter some problems. If we have to cross at the River Men area, there's a big gap between there and where we're going. And that's the sort of land where if I had like even 50 dudes on a horse or even 20, I would like send them up there to like wander up and down. Especially if that's the only bridge, you could just put guys there and wait.
Yeah, but if we came across the Riverman way and then came up behind those people waiting on that side of the bridge, we could avoid or engage them on our terms rather than coming across the bridge at them.
Yep.
Well, the other option is to cross to the north of the Grand Oratory.
But how would we cross? Like how? Like we don't have a boat. The way my thinking is with the Rivermen, they'll have craft to do that. The itself don't, short of some spell, maybe. If you guys can cook up something.
Well, all we know is the further north the river goes, then the narrower it will get. But yeah, as to whether we know there's any bridges there or fjords or not fjords, fords. That's what I mean. But yeah, I mean, I think it's a sure thing. The only thing is if we could actually get a boat down by the river people, we could definitely kind of lose the cart that way. But then, I mean, every time we come into contact with other people, we're sowing the seeds of rumor, you know, and leaving a trail that way. So if we could, yeah, it's tricky, yeah, because obviously I don't want to be stealing or lying too much either. So
neither do I.
Look, everything's a balance. We'll figure it out. I think, like you said, to head to the west, and then we'll make a break sort of through the lightly forested area, maybe to the south. And what do you think, Lloyd? Do you think cross to the north or cross to the south? Because either way, we got to get to the border people.
Yep, I think it's safer is a bad word because I don't think it's safe either way. But I think like the further south we go, the closer we come to House Tierra stuff. Yeah. So if we can cross north, then it's probably less dangerous overall. I mean, we might.
Well, how about?
But and bad weather.
So I guess you guys would know too that once you start getting like north past that upper bound of the map is where you start getting to the fringe edges of the kingdom. So it's more likely that you might run into other unsavory sorts. But it would again be further from any official house eyes. So both sides have their separate dangers. It's just a matter of which one that you prefer to take.
Well, I think the road appeals to me more now. Hearing that, I'd rather like face like unaligned enemies than aligned enemies, so to speak. maybe even be able to bind them through wit or guile or something. And it means we don't have the river people to gossip, which would surely be their biggest trade after like transporting goods. So we can insulate ourselves against that and have to problem solve our way across the wild terrain rather than navigate the possibly infested civilized path.
Yeah.
And Jeff, how easy would it be to cross from west to east across that that waterway there? If we have a boat, for example, if we send a boat north when we leave in the cart, we could either ferry us across, or if it's a big enough boat, I guess, or two small boats, we could travel from west to east across that bridge, that bridging waterway.
Yeah, so it would just be a matter of getting a boat. The Grand Oratory will not be so generous as to provide you with ships. So if you wanted ships, you'd have to send down south for them at the Rivermen to get one, and then go back up to cross. So that would still put you down through the path of prying eyes. Whether it's worth the risk will be up to you. I'm certain that far enough north, at some point, there would be crossings for those two rivers up north to come back around down to the border guard by from the north back down to the south.
And maybe some unsavory types with boats too. Like there might even be some other craft up there that we don't expect.
Yeah, or we could lash some rafts or something.
Oh, that's pretty dicey. We'll see how we go.
Yeah, so you're at the mercy of the crossings up north, or finding your own way across the rivers, or going down south to get a boat or to cross at the Rivermen. Either way.
And where are we at? Where are we at seasonally? Like for like snow melt or anything like that? Doesn't matter. You can tell us as we go. I'm just. It's going to come up sooner or later, I imagine, out in the wilderness.
Yeah, that is a good question. I think for the most dramatic tension, I think fall is probably always a good choice. Where winter is the ever looming threat.
Yeah.
And the more north you travel, obviously, the more harsh the change will be.
Yes. Good time for harvesting of castles. Yeah, cool. All right. Ready when you are.
Yep.
Alrighty, so then just to confirm, so you guys are you still planning to feint west to House Gawain and then head back and then go north, or
Yep. So at the very least, the oratory guards on the bridge would see us head that way if they're like bribed or gossip and stuff like that. And then by night try our chance. I know that at Master AMON can lead us in night just as well as in day. So like yeah, I'd like rely on that and be confident that we could, or not confident I should say, but that's what the way it would play out, I think.
Alrighty, and then how much of this plan would you speak to the various members of your group? Obviously, the three of you will be in good knowledge of it, but as far as Sir Walter and then the others, will you tell them where you intend to head, or will you leave them to follow you?
I will, but I want to like wait till the moon is up and do the blood rite, and then tell them.
Yeah. So for the moment, they know that you must leave, and then she will find place to go. But until that moment, they will be left wondering to where they will wander. Though they will obviously take note that you are heading currently due west, towards where House Gawain would be.
When we get across the bridge, Amon is going to move his fingers in a sort of complex geometric shape and sing a harmony by himself. He's going to summon an arcane eye. I'm just going to send that like straight up the river. It can move 30 feet per 6 seconds, and can go as far away from me as I want. So I'm just going to send it up the river so I can see if there is anywhere that we can ford while we walk west.
Yeah, and you have this simultaneous vision that will come over you, your two eyes, which will see forward, and then the third, which will see the flowing river, the passing trees and banks, as the eye moves out. The walls of the oratory passing by to give way to the various river crossings and the land that accompanies it, and it will begin to move ever steadily on northwards. And then the group will head out to the west. And as far as the others, yeah, the civilians will mostly pass in quiet, sort of a grim darkness as to the grander scale of the events that are happening. But they will trust in those that lead them, and will continue on westward.
Once it grows dark, I'll look to Yosef and Amon for confirmation and I guess reassurance too, before she picks a course, I should say, north, a wilder path as darkness falls. I think at that point the people would become quite questioning, but she'd carry herself such that they would know like not to ask. Yeah, her knowing that she will speak to them soon enough when the moon is up.
With guidance from, I'm sorry, which of the followers is it's well acquainted with hunting and travel in the outdoors?
Was that Idris?
So Idris is basically Corlan's assistant, so he spent most of his time, at least the later recent years, with him. So what he did before his time there is of much debate and perhaps shady practice. So he may have information on survival.
Whoever he'll listen, having had some experience on campaign, traveling with armies and the like. But he'll also take advice from others who are well acquainted with travel in the wilderness, and will attempt to make a camp so we're shielded from the south if we do light a fire, and also have somewhere, so kind of on the shoulder of a hill perhaps, so that we can climb that hill and keep watch over the road that we left, to see if any sort of armed parties travel along that route. If we're making camp, right? So is that correct?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
If that's the case, I'll like pull from this like equation that appears before me, like all these symbols that are like impossible to understand, that will like float in the air, and Amon will like look at them and like pluck certain ones and like move them into the correct positions until finally it like makes this image as he sings, and then we'll summon a tiny hut. It's really it doesn't even look like anything. It's sort of like a shimmer in the air, but if you step inside, it's warm and it's dry at the very least, and sort of like inlaid with various pieces of like elvish decoration, which maybe are uncomfortable for humans to look at. Like the angles are too complicated, and maybe like hurt a little bit to look at for too long, but nonetheless, that's what he makes.
Is this Liamon's tiny hut, I'm guessing?
That's right.
Yeah, so as the day turns to evening and dusk falls, the air, becoming more biting, the chill spreading across. The people alongside you will continue to follow, though as the night goes on and no information is given, they will begin to stir and become more restless, look to each other in whispers, and look to VIKTYRIA silently uh, until the night comes. And at the sight of this strange sorcery, some of them will shirk backwards, but none will dare to object or to say anything.
VIKTYRIA will move amongst them. Her vestments from the oratory gone now, replaced from whatever garb Eosif and AMON could recover from the place before they fled it. And garbed in that, she'll move amongst the people with the Glamour blade sheathed. And when she can find the moonlight, she'll hoist it up to that to bring silence to their wandering. Once she has it, she'll look above to that symbol of their house and draw it for the first time, feeling heavy, such that it swings unwieldy once it's liberated from the sheath and shines almost glisteningly as it's revealed. And starting at the base, just above the hilt, she'll move her palm up in one drawn motion, and hot blood wells up and spills down even before she's finished the course. And she feels something stir and some other strange sensation above the expected pain, as her own blood mingles with that of other forebears who have performed this rite all the way back to the beginning. And she will stand with bloody blade in one hand and bloody palm of the other outstretched towards the people, and intone words, an oath, a binding spell to her right, to her mantle, to her people and her land, and to follow the path as best as a human may of their house's disciple, the Lady of the Lake. And she will stand aloft, dripping blood in this pose as Corlin begins his ancient recitation.
Yeah, Corlin will begin. Once the blood on your hands runs down across the blade, mixing with every person who's ever called themselves Lord or Lady of the House over the great times of the past, up until now, and going into the future. And he'll grab the wrist of the hand that's been cut and raise it up into the air, and the blood will run down across your wrist and onto your forearms as the wound is lifted over your head. Under the eyes of the moon, Lady Rivka and all past members of the house, we now have before us Lady VIKTYRIA Rivkan, great descendant of disciple past, legacy of the house, vigil of the moon, great power that will come to wrestle itself across the land. Under this affirmation, do we now stand here to give oath of service, of power, of nobility, and of all appropriate reign to her grasp and to her decision to lead this house to glory or to folly, whatever great destiny that it may hold. And our duty as people is to see this done, follow her will, and to see this now low house rise again, to shine like the moon in the sky as it does this very night. It will be done. And he'll let your hand fall down, and he'll motion, and Maria will rush to your side, with prepared bandages, and will begin to wrap at your hand, to ensure that no more blood than is necessary is spilled from you tonight.
I think Joseph would step forward and hold them back, and would come forward to Lady VIKTYRIA and say, and grabbing her wrist, would say, "Bind this as a sign on your hand, and fix it as an emblem on your forehead." And he would take like a fingertips worth of blood and place it on her forehead. And looking down, she would see that even as he's passed the blood to her forehead, the wound is healed. And he would continue, "For everything there is a season and a time for every matter under heaven. A time to be born and a time to die. A time to plant and a time to pluck up what is planted. A time to kill and a time to heal. But never, lady, a time to forget." And he would step back.
She'll nod solemnly as the marred like blood print forms in her forehead, feeling the weight of the words as he steps back from her.
Amon sees like this repetition, like he's seen this in different rooms, in different places, many times throughout his life. And he just sees like a sort of like flash dum, 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 of all of the like Rivkan lords and ladies that he's seen take this oath before, for a moment as he watches, and then like nods, satisfied.
All the people who have journeyed with you, Walter and Maria, as well as the others, Emma, Brandt, and Idris, and Corland, would all then bow, a deep, kneeling bow, to solidify their new position of authority. And each person individually would be called by Corland to speak vow of service and fealty to the new lady, as is fit to be in the tradition of this place. And one by one, each of them would do so. Walter first, reaffirming his vow to your safety, an eternal vigil to your guard. Maria, in service to you. And then the others, Brandt, Emma, and Idris, and all of them will swear to varying degrees of commitment and authority. Brandt being the most fervent. Emma will speak it, though it seems she does not understand the grasp of the oaths of the lords. And Idris will say the words, though to you, and especially to Amon, would be the least committed of all, though he will still say the words genuinely. And once everyone is sworn their oaths in service to you, and that you will be in service to them, Corland will like take some of the meager rations that have been given to you by the oratory, before saying a short blessing over them and passing them around as if it were some feast to give honor to what's happened, though it would be lacking in the noble grandeur that such feasts have had in the past.
VIKTYRIA like thinks to herself, this is the poorest swearing that likely has been in her foolish, like narrowed perspective, and is like solemn, is somber about it, which is hid by the solemnity to most, but the keenest of eyes. And she won't speak of it, like to bring it into like truth, but it's probably obvious to Amon and Joseph that she's preoccupied with those thoughts. And she thinks as she looks over these people, like, if Father couldn't save all of the men and women in AMON with its great walls and its lake and his army, how will she save these group of disparate people? And who is she to take these vows she's given when she would have so easily tried to forsake those at the oratory? These things of self-doubt begin to gnaw at her all too quickly after like the heady feeling of the rite and its bloodletting.
It is important, lady, that the thunder is loud, so that the small folk remember to bless themselves. This is appropriate thunder.
And bless themselves they should. Remember, in your distress, in your discomfort, remember a people driven north out of the southern land and great perdition, who ate only of insects and roots, and yet celebrated what they had, for they were sustained by their faith. Should it be any less so for those seated about this fire?
No, good Joseph. They have little more than their faith left to them, and so should put stock in it and treasure it. But that sounds half like something she might have said back to one of the dames in the oratory, and Joseph notes the rhetoric tone.
Yeah, I think Joseph would nod at that, and he understands. And kind of leaning back out of the firelight, I think he takes off this simple iron circlet that is the emblem of the crown that he wears, one of the 4 pillars of the faith, and rubs at the indentation it leaves on his skin, and of a sudden feels older. He's no longer in the full flush of youth and power, and beginning to age a bit, and never has he felt more tired than he does now, having seen so many of those comforts and things he had thought to, well, not to be eternal, knowing elves such as they are, but at least lasting foundations of his life, knocked low and set aflame. And as he rubs at his forehead, he also notices the texture of a patina of rust on the inside of the circlet, and begins to compulsively start scratching it off.
Tomorrow, my people will go east. We head to the Widow's Mountains, east beyond the Oratory and the East Ward. We go into danger and the unknown. And I am honoured to go in your company, and will do what I may to see us back to AMON.
Did I spot any sort of places where we could easily ford the river, or like, did I see anything interesting with my arcane eye?
I was just about to get to that, actually. Yeah, so you have this like strange dual sensation. Like on one half of your vision, there's like this still flickering fire in the darkness. The other, this like rush of water that continues to move as your eye skims the surface. And it would be quite a ways north, I think a couple miles at the very least, if not a dozen or so, that there would be this like section on the western river of the 2 rivers that kind of delta down into the old oratory. where the river kind of splits across different like rocky across like different outcroppings, where instead of one strong deep river, it kind of breaks across into several smaller streams, which then join back a short ways down further, joining back into the singular strong entity. And that is at the point of the river that you would see that it's the shallowest on that side. And you would see there as well that there's currently on the eastern bank of that sort of split stream section a tent that'll have 2 men and a woman inside of it. One of the men is sitting outside of it with a fire. The other 2 are inside the tent and sleeping.
Yeah, I guess I would urge the eye in that direction and see if I can notice anything specific about these people, like if they look like they're Southerners, or if they're border guards, or if they're whoever they are.
Yeah, it seems as if they're just travelers. Their garb is plain. Seem to be geared towards the sort of outdoor trek that such a thing might entail. Their supplies seem to be very limited. They have like knives and hatchets, but it seems as if they're made more for tools than for weaponry.
Okay. Yeah, I think at this stage, like probably it's likely that the eye has run out. It does move amazingly quickly, but it only lasts for an hour. So like I'll have a quick look there and take another look for like landmarks around the ford that I'll be able to remind myself of, and then I'll dismiss it.
Yeah, the eye fades, and your vision becomes whole again into this place that you're physically present. The fire encompassing where once there was rushing river. And you're left sitting to your own devices here in the camp. As dusk continues to fade into true night, many of the common folk will begin to find and set up their tents if they had not already done so, and unless ordered to do otherwise, would begin to set in for the night. Though Walter would approach you, VIKTYRIA, and inquire as to where and how, if any, watch should be set, and that he would be glad to continue his service to remain vigil through the night if it is required of him.
You'll need to be strong tomorrow, Sir Walter, and we'll need your rest. We'll share the watch between those who can. Master AMON has his ways to make us secure, and Iosif trained much in the dangerous arts. Between them and yourself, however you deem fitting. She says, showing a glimmer of like uncertainty and not knowing like exactly how to do it. When like witnessing her forebears, she's seen them do it with ease. She lets it on to Sir Walter in a way that I don't think she would to either Iosif or AMON.
Yeah, and he'll see the bit of uncertainty on your face, and will take your orders in the most generous way that he can to see that the lack of confidence that you might portray them with is brought with much more fervor and certainty when he relays it to the others. And he will tell AMON and Yosef that they will trade watches and that they can borrow from some of the civilians as well if it's necessary to set up other posts. But that between the 3 of them, it should be well enough to scout for trouble.
Yeah, AMON is confident that he can do it on his own. He can see in the dark. He only sleeps for 4 hours, and even then, he's mostly aware, and so he's confident that he could do it on his own if that's necessary. He might even be so generous as to suggest that it's necessary because it looks like Yosef is having a tough time. He's exhausted. Everyone's exhausted, and his like unearthly grace makes him a lot better at these sort of situations than the rest.
Walter would be this like strange duality of like set at ease, yet set at alarm by the request that you will single-handedly mind the watch, because you don't need to sleep, and that would both comfort and discomfort him at the thought of such a being able to do such things. But he would eventually relent to the wisdom that the men who need it should sleep, and that those that don't and can see are best to watch over places such as this. And if you will solely mind the watch, then they will allow you to do so.
I think Joseph would look up to AMON, and this is not the first time they've had this conversation. But who will watch the watcher? And but then he'll also acknowledge his fatigue, and he'll say, I shall stand watch also, at least for a little while. And I know, Elf, you like to pretend you are of divinity itself, but I know you'd like to rest your eyes for a time or two.
Then we shall share the load, Joseph. Long ago, he has learned that this is like a fruitless conversation. And although Amon will live forever, Joseph won't. And so he's learned to cut it short as quick as possible. Like many times in his life, he has offered to do this on many of the adventures and like expeditions and things that Joseph and Amon would have gone on. But he knows it's fruitless, and so he'll just submit.
Plus, I think there is much to discuss of coming days, weeks, months. And Joseph would look up at Lady VIKTYRIA, half with some concern, as if he has a conversation unsaid he's been carrying, and also perhaps acknowledging her new purchase upon authority in this matter.
I would walk in nature and make my prayers before turning in, Joseph, if you would join me.
Yeah, Joseph will stand, and for a moment he'll run the iron circlet back and forward in his hands, feeling its weight before settling it back onto his forehead and nodding, going to accompany VIKTYRIA.
Joseph, you go.
No, you're right. Go ahead.
There is something I must confess.
I abide to bear witness.
I prayed to the Savior that this would happen. And I know he's cursed me for my foolishness. And I know that I'm not worthy. I have the...
Surely, my lady, you did not beseech the Saviour to lay your house low and reduce AMON to its foundations.
No. I pleaded for him to intercede in some way. Anyway, they were my words, she says, and her teeth are a little clenched and there's tears gathering, refracting the moonlight.
Well, do you think this world responds to your every wish? Do you think great events turn on your nightly prayers?
No, but I know that the Savior can be capricious, as the natural world around us.
Yeah, I think he'll kind of sigh at that one, and as it's something that's puzzled him also to presume to know the will of the Savior or understand or make sense of the things that happen in the world. I think he would pause in his step and turn to VIKTYRIA. All we can know is what has happened in the past, and perhaps we can guess at what may be, or even more, the reasons behind these things, the great wheels that turn. But never forget, the Savior showed us our way to freedom. And that freedom is nothing less than the great weight of responsibility for the path you choose in the world. We cannot know what is intended. We cannot steer great events with only our nightly prayers. But we can steer our actions and the choices we make. And never forget debts we owe. I would tell you that your family died well, but in truth, it is only part of the tale. It was great sacrifice for noble ideals, and yet poorly treated were they by the enemy. And I'll not hide that from you. But as our people earned their freedom through suffering, so too we must carry these challenges and hope only that we are equal to this task. And in a way, he's talking to VIKTYRIA, and he's also reminding himself of his own station to be an example of the pillars of faith to others. And at that moment, he winces, and his hand goes to his side. A wound that even his prayers for sustenance to the Savior seems not quite to have healed. And he returns upright, perhaps leaning slightly more heavily on his staff, and looks to VIKTYRIA and seeks to put out of his mind the child that he knew and look to the lady who's now the head of House Rivkan.
She'll smile, which creases her the corner of her eyes, so the tears will stream down, and she'll lean in and put a hand on your waist where the war wound is, and say, "Some wounds I'm not meant to heal," and she'll hold out her left palm where she'd been cut by the Glamorn blade, and despite the healing he'd applied there, the scar tissue remains and will remain. I will not forget.
Aye. Well, let us work justice together. For there are grave threats on this land, and though some are more savage and sorely felt, they are symptoms of greater ills, I fear. A time of tribulation approaches. And I hope we are strong enough to meet it.
That unsettles her, his question, because she thinks the same thing. And for her, someone she sees as a pillar to wonder so doesn't help her confidence. I think she just shares the silent moment of humanity between them. And then we'll ask for him to, in detail, tell her of how her family passed on the walk back to her tent, and try not to lose herself in that grief till she at least gets inside the pavilion or in amongst the weird, bizarre, unnerving elven architecture and unknowable angles inside the treated area.
Yes, and I think Joseph will relate, again, adopting the impartial or more impartial tones of the exemplar, where he relates what has passed, seeking not to soften it or adulterate it with concession to human feeling. But at the end, of course, it's almost his voice changes and he says, but with the heaviness of such news, perhaps sit by the fire a while and let the light and the warmth kindle in your heart. It would not be good to try to sleep straight after such news has been delivered directly.
I think I will sleep little tonight, but I would not have the people see me crying by the fireside. I'll not forget my lessons. I must be thunder for them.
I think he'll nod at that wisdom, and to go and take up his place, at least for some short while, in vigil next to AMON.
AMON is busy with magical preparations for the night to make this easier and safer. We'll spend some time like wandering up and down the obvious sort of way to approach, and we'll cast alarm as a ritual, and like leave that there, basically saying like animals and things that pass through it are fine, but if there's a person, that it will be a mental ping that goes off in his head to let him know that someone has entered unexpectedly. And then I would like to try and scry on Lord Tieran, since I'm just sitting around for a little bit. If you think that's possible, Jeff. Actually, I mean, it actually wouldn't want to be him. It would want to be like in the battle. I probably would have seen like some knight or like Radlord leading a charge or something like that, like some sort of captain or sergeant or something. Though I think it's easier if I know the person, so maybe it's best to go with Lord Tieran. So
yeah,
like,
so it depends on if it's somebody you've heard of versus somebody that you know versus somebody that you have some object of possession from, and so on, will like determine how successful
right.
the
To do with
spell is.
stuff, right? Oh, I'm just looking at it now. Okay. Now it's very likely that Lord Tieran, if he's in his castle, is going to be unscryable, I would think. I don't want to throw a 5th level spell on that. So I'm going to try and scry, I'm going to say like some sort of captain or sergeant, like a knight who would have been in the battle, who like the kind of man who like has a scar on his face and like a gruff voice and like a kettle helm, you know? Someone like that. Someone who I think that after the battle is done does not go back to the castle, but goes out to do dirty work.
Okay. Yeah, there's a certain knight that you remember seeing commanding the charge. He was the one that like led the cavalry in the outer defensives. And then despite the cavalry charge being done outside, like dismounted from the horse and continued on to like charge the actual inside. And it seems that he has some authority, though you do not know his name. You remember distinctly this like red cloak that surrounded him around his armor that he wore. It's like tattered and cut. The tides of battle wrecking it. And it seems like silly to you most of all that someone would wear something like that into battle. But it's clear it's some sort of signifier of import and some sort of almost banner in a way to him. And you would like focus on that symbol in your mind. And what's your spell save DC?
17.
17. Because you do not know this man's name or have any object of him, he will get a +5 to the save as per the spell.
Okay.
Oh, but that's an 8 on the die. So despite a +5 and his wisdom modifier, he will fail the save. So the scene changes. What does the actual scrying look like from you?
Yeah, so he Amon will take like of the paltry possessions that he has. He only has like 3 or 4 things that he owns, but they're all of exceptional quality. And he will like sit cross-legged and pull out this like bowl with like intricate carvings all around the inside. It's sort of silvery and gold. And he will like pour some water, and then we'll like go through some rituals to cleanse the water entirely so that it's like perfectly clear. And then he'll begin to like spin and like sing 3 voices at the same time, and like move his fingers in these complicated sort of symbols. And he like pictures in his mind very clearly this man, but he also pictures the siege, and he pictures one of the first things that he learned is to think of several things at the same time. And so he does this, and through all of this, the water will turn sort of murky and silvery until it looks like a mirror, and then you can look into it.
As your eyes peer into the bowl, you see the charging of horses, the thundering of footsteps. This man in his shining mail and tattered cloak, commanding the troops. You remember the blaze set in the castle, him charging, spear in hand, to take down the soldiers who worked in service to your house. And it's like the flames of the castle Rivkan that you imagine so vividly to put this man into place and service grow. The smoke will cloud the mirror for a moment. And then this man is no longer shouting commands and slaying soldiers of your house, but he's knelt around a campfire not dissimilar to yours. You can see portions of Castle Rivkan in the back skyline, barely visible in the darkness of the night, but there nonetheless. And he's looking across to several other men who are sitting around this campfire as well, and you would hear his voice go out. So as we have determined, it seems that not all members of the house were eliminated during the charge. We'll have to send men. This cannot be left to stand. You, and I like point across the campfire to some place out of sight. I need you to go west, House VIKTYRIA. They may be housing her there if she fled from the castle. It is unwise that we destroy the house at this moment. It might cause others to worry. That will be left for the lords to decide, however. But for now, see if there is any information you might gather from there. Otherwise, you will report back to me. You too. And I'll point again, like into the shadows behind the mirror. Take some of the troops and head to the oratory. If she is, in fact, the second daughter, it will be customary that she will have been sent there. It would be wise to check to see if she is in their records. We must ensure that she's found.
I'll take a look around the scene, noting like the direction of the castle to where they are. are they north or south or east or west of it? I want to note as much as I can about this man, like the exact look of his face, like the color of his beard, any sort of like scars or like deeply worn lines and things like that. I'll focus on that with like all of my elven might, which is significantly more focused than any mortal could muster, and try and memorize this man perfectly. But yeah, those are the two things I would focus on.
Yeah, there's like this strange scene where even though it's night, your elven eyes can see details far greater than any normal man could see. And you can see the slightest shimmer of water well beyond the campfire, and then the ruins of Rivkan on the other side. You would know that this lake is Lake Glamorn. It seems that they are on the western edge of Lake Glamorn, opposite of where Rivkan sits in the strait between the two lakes. That they have begun to head westward towards House Boletaria, and then perhaps further on.
Okay.
The man himself is like it seems as if he's attempted to keep his beard trimmed down, though it's still well worn with stubble, and is like simultaneously like trimmed and unkempt, in a way that only those who like travel and fight wars can have. You would see scars, some across his like chin, patching in missing spots in the beard, and another like down the side of his neck that disappears down into his shirt. Well-worn scars, not sustained during this battle, but some many years prior, from a forgotten time in the past. He's surprisingly like moderate of stature. Like it's clear that he's well versed in combat and is like well fit, but he's like no towering giant or like a tyrannical overlord. Place him somewhere likely in the sort of middle stature, well enough to give commands and lead large numbers of troops. But obviously he is not the lord and sits in no castle. And you commit his face, and you're sure that you might recall it someday if you ever were to see him again or want to do this another time, that his face would likely cement a greater understanding of the spell.
I'll let the spell linger for the full duration in the hopes that he will foolishly say someone's name or reveal some information, since he couldn't be aware of it. So I'll wait there as long as I can and like stare into the mirror, while at the same time sort of like thinking about if these people go here and these people go there, and should I now tell the lady that they're going to the house she was concerned about, or should I not concern her with that? And these kind of questions are like going through his mind while he focuses the other part of his mind.
Yeah, the conversation will continue. It'll fall mostly into sort of small talk. And they will spend no small time gloating their victory to each other in honor of a battle well won, and a house on its ropes. Though they will give away no crucial strategy, having spoken largely within what's already been discussed. Though at some point you would hear one of the other men approach and address this man as Captain Albrecht. He is the one who is giving orders. This man who you've seen. This man will tell him that the camp has been finished, that the fires are done, that the foods have been set and consumed, and that the men are sleeping for the night.
Yeah, so Amon will linger until the spell finally fizzles, and the water turns murky and then clear again. And he will like take that water from the bowl and like move to a spot outside of the alarmed area and like pour it carefully onto the grass, where there's a sort of noise, although only he could really hear it, a sort of cannot drink that water. And he will like take the bowl and put it back into his pack, and then commence his watch.
And as the spell in the mirror fades and the water is thrown down, the true darkness will remain over. Within this magical dome, this hut of arcane construction. It will be warm and comfortable, significantly more so than the two of you outside on guard. Though Aman, you are likely used to such things much more so than Yosef may be. And during the night, though it is restless for much of the evening for you, VIKTYRIA, eventually sleep will fall. And then I will need you to make a wisdom saving throw for me, if you would. And you will add 5 to your roll.
I do not have dice, so I'm just going to roll on a dice roll. 13.
So in the midst of sleep, you find yourself like walking through Kaer Morhen, a dream that's fallen upon you, and it seems to like warp back and forth, like twisting eerily between the place that you remember so many years ago, this like beautiful historied building, and then you'll take another step and it'll like fade into ruin, scorched marks and blood-stained walls and tattered tapestries now in ruin, falling to pieces. And each step you take seems to like wave between this like pure memory and this dark reality. And then you'll see an elven form, and for a moment that you think that it may be Amon or Amen. And as you say his name, you call out to heed his wisdom, to know what sort of thing may be happening as this like place seems to like twist and warp between times. But then, as the figure turns, you'll see that it is not, in fact, Amen. But this. She has the same eerie beauty and form to Amen, but it is not him. It is a woman. She has strange marks on her forehead, a beautiful icy eye, and she'll turn and she'll see, and she'll look upon you, and a smile will curl from her mouth. Just the tiniest hint, with all the subtlety that you're used to expecting from Amen. And then this like place that you're in will fade, and you'll be like standing upon this open expanse of water. It looks like Lake Glamorn, but as if it were expanded to 10 times the size. You can't see the edges of it, the banks where your house would be, and you both stand upon the water as if by magic. And she'll like walk towards you and sit down upon the water as if it were solid stone next to you. And she says no words. And if you speak to her, she says nothing back. She does not respond. She just kind of watches next to you.
VIKTYRIA will like sit down cross-legged next to her on the watery surface, studying her with parts human curiosity and parts instinct or fear of this unnatural thing, with utmost mastery of the natural world. And she'll say, "You're the house elf of House Tiara." And I
Her
guess
head
she'll
will
say
like
other things, but there's no answer.
Yeah, her like head will turn with like the utmost slowness, like a deliberateness and patience that like cannot be matched by humans. And she'll like look at you and like listen, uh, taking note of your voice, of your manners, of how you sit, of how you speak, uh, like absorbing every inch of how you interact. And then she puts a hand on your shoulder, and as she touches, there's this like strange sharpness, and you'll spring to awake, and and see that Valter has placed his hand on your shoulder to wake you in the morning.
And she probably shocks awake. And like, like in one of those dreams where you're running through a field, but put your foot down a hole and trip into awakeness. And then she'll relax a couple of instants after Valter's form coalesces over the top of her. And she looks to his face for any sign that there might be some trouble. And if it's not there, she'll visibly give a and then like move to try and get up.
Sorry to disturb you, lady. I did not mean to surprise you.
No,
Good
it's
morning.
fine. She lies.
People must, I figure it would be best to move as soon as the people are awake. I did not mean to disrupt you.
Where is Amon?
He'll kind of like look out through the dome that surrounds them, this arcane construction. You should be outside under watch as normal.
Is Iosif awake? See to it that you have the people ready to go. I must speak to Master Amon at once.
I will rally the others. Make sure that they are prepared to move as soon as your command is given. And like set about to start like shaking others awake.
I think actually she'll realize that she's forgetting a very important piece to like protection from elves, and so we'll actually have Iosif come with her to see the elf, and both parties would be able to see the worry writ clear upon her face. And once they're together and alone in the strange elven dimension, she will relay with whatever details she can from like the foggy and quickly receding memory of her dream, if it was a dream, to them both. And in the silence that follows the words that she gives, the dread begins to grow in her with every microsecond.
I will need to cast spells upon you, lady. And he looks to Iosif.
I think he would sort of frown and look up to the sky as if for some kind of guidance, and then down to VIKTYRIA and would say, "It is your choice, my lady, though it would seem elvish magic is the problem, not necessarily the cure."
Do you think that you can protect her from magical scrying? Do you think that you can stop the elf from finding her again? If you believe that you can do so, I suggest you do it immediately. They could strike at any time. I'm not trying to demean you. I'm simply asking the questions.
I say, there are some prayers that could aid, but as I said, it is the lady's choice. Perhaps this is a conversation for later.
Cannot wait.
I agree.
Will be like unusually stern on that.
Yeah, it's probably a bit disconcerting to VIKTYRIA to see him break from like his serene calmness, even just a little. And that unnerves her further, and she says, I feel ill at ease that the power we wield may be used and turned against us. And though I know there is merit to confounding an enemy when you know they are spying on you, I do not think to put my wits or guile against that of an elf. If you can protect me from her, it should be done. And so I consent if you think it wisest, Master Amon.
I do. If their house elf is not so tightly leashed as I, there are many things that they could do with information. You say that she studied you. They could make a copy of you and have
She
her
studied me over long. I don't need to describe it. I described in like ridiculous detail what I could remember of it for any like insight that it might give Amon. So yeah, I would say she like studied me long.
I mean, you would be able to piece together from the description of this woman, the symbol and the eyes in particular stand out as a woman that you once knew many centuries ago. So you have not spoken with her directly, in dozens, if not hundreds of years since the accord has been given, and that the elves have been split out amongst the houses. But this is a woman whose primary name is Heket. That she is the lady house elf of House Tieren at this point. You knew her way back from your time when the time of the elves was still amongst this place. That she is said to have wisdom even amongst the elves, and that her icy eyes have been said to see through water as if it were space, and that she has a great gift, insight, and knowledge even amongst the elves and the sorcerers.
I know her well because we specialize in the same ways. So I understand her magic and she understands mine. Amon's mind is racing with all the things that Heket could do with just knowing what Lady Rivkan looks like and how she moves. He doesn't want to panic her, and so he will say, "There are 2 spells that I must cast upon you. I will have to watch you while you sleep also, for signs of another attack. One will clear all magic from you, and the second will protect you from further attempts to find you."
Did Amon swear an oath to Lady Victyria last night?
No.
I just assumed.
I assumed as well, but I guess we didn't do the scene. But yeah, he would have certainly.
Yeah, in that case, she'll say, "See it done," and would stand I don't know, the way that someone stands to be measured by a tailor, I guess, or something some weird ungraceful to an elf way, as if she stands ready to be doused with spells or something.
And Yosef lifts his staff and thuds it into the ground with far less drama than he did previously against the flagstones, but says, "And I shall bear witness." And I guess he'll just watch the elf closely with what faculties he's able to bring bear.
I will cast Dispel Magic. I'll look carefully at Lady Victryria and pull these threads that come from nowhere, as if I'm pulling them out of thin air. These very thin, sort of they almost look like needles. And I'll move them very carefully around her and try and detect any sort of magic and dispel it. And when that's done, I'm going to cast non-detection on her, which will look like a sort of shroud is placed upon her, very much sort of mirroring the putting a cowl over her, or the cloak of the church. Though this one is sort of ethereal and not fully visible, there's just a shimmer in the air. I'll cast, first Dispel Magic and then non-detection.
As the first spell, the Dispel Magic, happens, Victyria, in your mind, you see for just a moment, the briefest of moments, a flashback to that lake where the elven woman sat upon it as if it were land. And you see her as if threads of tapestry being pulled begin to unravel from your mind. This strange unwrapping of beauty into its fundamental parts, as the vision of the lake and this woman is taken apart piece by piece. And you feel this sort of haze upon you that you didn't know you felt descend away as this spell happens.
Victyria looks similar. Looks obviously relieved, though can't explain it. Any of that vision that she just witnessed. I don't think she has the words for it or the comprehension of it. But it was so striking to her the moment, that last image of the eyes before they decompartmentalize down into base matter. Things that humans shouldn't have vision of. Strikes her stunned for a moment before the feeling of safety wipes out those other gnawing concerns.
Yeah, once that's complete, Amon will stay very close by VIKTYRIA as they like travel for the day. Going to be trying to basically keep aware and like expand his sort of vision into like the astral plane as much as possible. Like not mechanically, just like he's going to be focusing on that and like focusing upon the weave of magic and the rhythms and the songs within it to try and like defend against any sort of further attacks.
After the three of you return back to the camp, these sorceress rituals completed to protect you and lay symbols of safety upon your head. Walter will see you approach and will go to meet you. The others have prepared. The cart's been loaded. The tents have been disassembled. We'll be ready to depart at your command, lady.
Let us lead. Then let us leave this place and head on. We have a long march before us.
Idris, is there anything to be done to disguise the tracks where they depart the path?
He'll like be surprised at the sudden calling to attention of him from this great exemplar knight. He'll kind of look quizzically for a moment as if the gears in his mind turning over what you've asked. It will be simple enough to guard footsteps, but the wheels of the cart leave quite a mark. It would take significant effort to remove all signs, though if time is willing to be spent on it, I'm sure we could find a way.
Time we do not have. Yet this ruse will surely be found if they're following close upon our trail.
It's likely we'll have to leave the path at the rivers and forsake the cart. So maybe we can abandon the weakest of the horses or drays we have to send that cart on lazily to wherever its fate ends it, so that if the wagon ruts are followed, they'll like obscure our path a little further.
There's nothing unusual about a wagon traveling, and there are no tent pegs. There are no signs of camp here beyond some flattened grass
And a fire. Plus, if another elf does watch from afar, and I guess I would kind of snap around to look at Amon and say, how much can she know if she peers into the dreams of Lady VIKTYRIA? Can she know where it is she dwells?
Jeff, I know and have that spell prepared. Is it reasonable to then like assume that I understand that it was a dream spell that she sent?
Yeah, so this was basically like in effect, like me adding on a bit of extra to just the scrying spell.
Oh, okay, it wasn't dream.
Yeah, so that was just her like seeing and hearing Lady VIKTYRIA through the sleep with just a little bit of fluff added on for effect. So you would know that she's like seen like the 9 people that were inside the hut. So VIKTYRIA, Walter, and the other civilians, and would have like seen sort of like the outskirts of where you're at. So the actual information that she would be given, unless she has like an astounding geographical memory, which, you know, for elves, who knows, that it would be difficult for her to like pinpoint exactly where you are and exactly where you intend to go.
Right.
That it would be like guesswork at best.
She would have seen who is within the tent with us. She would have seen this area, though it is not unique. There are a few landmarks beyond our tent itself, a small fire. It is not impossible that she knows exactly where we are, but it is unlikely. It will not happen again.
Well, it is best we move rather than spend overmuch time covering our trail. I would counsel, my lady.
Time is of the essence. Let us go and be comforted by Amon's protection. We should speak of this no more in front of the others unless we must.
Yosef will chafe a little at this shifting of balance towards the elf, and but continue on in stoic silence.
And like interestingly, Amon doesn't think about that at all. It's not important to him. That's a huge difference between men and elves, is that this is like what he does, and the fight of dominance between them is like immaterial to Amon because he already knows he's superior.
And Yosef remembers Amon referring to humans as animals and thinks, how can he truly be loyal to VIKTYRIA if he thinks she's no more than an animal?
Oaths.
And as the company prepares to depart, they head back around northwest to cross the dual rivers above the oratory. Like see flashes of like House Rivkan in flames, of Commander Albrecht giving orders to depart, like Heket in some unseen arcane domain, and the others of our company here setting out the tracks of the cart, leaving behind the campsite as our group moves northwards across towards the border guard once they arrive. I think that will be a good point to stop session 1.
Oof.
Huzzah!
Excellent. Same time tomorrow.
Alrighty, and with that, I'll go ahead and end the broadcast. But thanks to anybody who watched. This was really fun to get started.